We have our first round of limited sector and regional events coming soon this weekend. Philadelphia will be the first one. I'll be going, so will my teammate Kyle, and we're here tonight to break down how we've been approaching our prep for the event. We're going to talk about what we think the best leaders are, the best cards, the best groups of cards, and how to make these less desirable leaders work. I mean, we go into these events and there's a lot of variance to what we're doing, and I think one of the goals here tonight and with our prep overall is trying to figure out how to eliminate that variance. I'm Jordan from the Colorado Cantina Crew, and like I said, Kyle is here to help me figure it out. So how you doing? How's the prep going? How you feeling?
Yeah, man, I'm doing great. For us here in Colorado, I think the best way to have started prepping for this would have been to have a PQ, but we weren't fortunate to get one anywhere near us here in Colorado.
Nope.
And so it would have been a pretty significant travel to make one happen. So I've got to live vicariously through streams, kind of see other people play, but up until now, limited play has not been highly competitive. You know, we get to do it at pre-releases. There's a couple stores where we'll fire now and then, but now we're taking it seriously, right? We're actually trying to prepare. In fact, we just, you and I and a couple of our buddies went down to a store and kind of held our own sealed deck because we just wanted to have one happen just to get practice in, right? So, we're working on it.
Totally. So what we're going to be working on here tonight, little agenda of sorts, is like I said, we're going to go through these best leaders. We're going to do a little tier list to rank them. As we talk about these leaders, we're going to talk about some of the less desirable ones also, and we'll also call those the bad leaders, and we're going to try to figure out how to work through it. Let's talk about groups of cards that you should be looking for, and we're going to approach this even knowing that if you get top 8, you're going to be very lucky and you get to do a draft. We're going to approach this from the general perspective as we're building for leaders and building for color pairings that we think we can do. So we're going to talk about these leaders, how to play them, how to play against them, and what you should be expecting along the way. Any notes, Kyle?
No, I don't think so. I mean, I think we're going to see quickly that there's definitely there are groups, right, of really playable leaders and other. But at least the thing to say in limited plays, sometimes you're just going to get hosed, right? Like you hope that doesn't happen. But we've been practicing doing a few of these little preparation tournaments ourselves, kind of try to run some limited. And there's been a few times where you open your 6 packs, and you're like, all right,
that's unfortunate.
You have to make this work, right?
Yeah. And that's why we're putting the work in, right? So we're going to talk about some resources too along the way. We'll put those in the description below. Some of those are great streams from some of our friends in the community, C Raptor amongst them, some great content there that you could really get prepared for. Okay, so let's dive in. We'll just talk about the leader, the tier list first. And what we're going to do is we'll start with kind of like the obvious ones here, the ones that everybody kind of talks about, and try to figure out what we think, the supposed meta is. The issue with this limited stuff, right, is that you really need to pay attention, right? Because there's no data, there's no SWU based stats, there's no integrations, there's no data tracking, right? So you really need to pay attention, and we have been paying attention, so we'll hope to get into it. Okay, so Kyle, you could kick it off. Give us our top leader, or your first one that you want to talk about.
Yeah, so if I'm opening my packs, the leader I'm hoping to see the most, at least in the play that I've seen so far, has been Snoke.
Okay.
He's not head and shoulders above a couple other ones we're going to put in the same tier. Sure. Snoke is very good. There's a few things I like about him. He's in a color pairing, or at least he starts with green, and there's a lot of powerful cards that augment Snoke in green, right? He's a snowball leader, meaning like you're going to be giving things XP. And sometimes if you could just keep slamming that XP and they don't have an answer immediately, you can snowball a win. You get some of those free wins with Snoke. You might have like the Exegol fighter. You get that ship up in space, right? And you just start buffing it and running away with the game. The other thing I like is that there's a lot of other good cards in green that I'm looking for. And it also keeps me open to pairing him with other colors that have things I'm looking for, like removal, right? I often find myself liking to pair Snoke with blue or red, right? It just kind of depends on the cards that you get. But Snoke, he's a huge body too when he flips. So I think that's important, right? When he comes out, he can be very hard to deal with. He can continue the snowball. But the last thing I would mention about him is his ability does not require the force, right? So especially in limited or in sealed, but it can also happen in draft. If you don't get enough ways to activate force, and of course there's a lot of them in this set, but sometimes it can get a little dry. You have some of these other leaders where you're required to have the force for it to work. That's not the case with Snoke. Now he does have a separate downside. You have to have a villainy card, but I find that those are easier to come by most of the time.
So
I think that build that we did the other week, Jordan, you actually had Snoke and you didn't have enough villainy cards, so it can happen.
So here's the deal, right? Let's talk about what you need to figure out when you're playing a deck like Snoke, right? Like I firmly agree. I think Snoke is 100% in the top 3 for what we're talking about here, and maybe number 1, right? But it might be the most challenging to have a pool for, and drafting wise, it might be a little bit easier because you could direct those villainous cards towards you. But I do think you really need to be careful about how many villainy cards you get in your pool. It's not a leader you could force, right? So here are the one of the things that I think about as I'm building for any leader, right? So for Snoke, what do you need? Well, question number 1, answer I have for you is you need villainy units, period. X-Skull Patroller, like Kyle mentioned, perfect, but there's a lot of other great options too. And if you do get those, and we're talking about what would make you feel comfortable, Kyle, along your curve? Would it be 5 villainous units? Is that too little or enough for you?
That's probably a little too low.
Okay.
But it depends on where they're at in the curve. I'm gonna weight early villainous units heavier than later villainous units. And again, because with Snoke, I'm trying to snowball a lot of the time. I want to have a few different options for turn 1 to slam a
Sure.
villainous unit. That's why I mentioned the Exegol ship. But also, if you end up pairing with red, there's the O3 villainy red ship, right? There's different options that you could get on turn 1 that allow you to start snowballing with Snoke. If you don't get the snowball going right away, you want to get it turn 2, turn 3. Later in the game, it becomes less impactful. His ability is still good, but you can't snowball because at that point we're getting into an established part of the game. There might be removals starting to hit you, that sort of thing. So I really find you want to try to hit a villainous unit turn 1. Better yet, you got 2 2-drops that are both villainous, so that turn 2 you can buff and play another one, right?
So if we're asking what do you need, the first answer we have is villainous units with a focus on early villainous units,
yep.
right?
Yep,
and
I think so.
Without those, you're in trouble. Okay, what's another thing that you need? The first thing that comes to mind outside of villainous units is some sort of removal. Right.
Yeah, and that's going to be true for all decks, right? So we've kind of heard there's acronyms that have been out there.
Sure.
The one I'm familiar with for sealed play is called BARK, and so there's 4 things you're looking for. The R in BARK is removal, as you say, right? And so removal, very important. And I'll go through them in letters here. So B is for bombs. Those are your big things, the game-winning cards, things that are going to be hard to deal with that can close out the game. A is ambush. Ambush is like pseudo removal, right?
Sure.
There are units that can come out and kill something, very effective in limited play. R, removal. And then K is interesting. The K is for curve. So I guess you could see BARC, B-A-R-C, but it's the curve, right? You can't have a lopsided deck construction. You can't have all low plays and then just get run over the top. And you can't have all high plays and have no early curve, right?
Barking and all of that aside, I will say though that I do think that Snoke is probably a little bit more susceptible to the R of it all because he is a later flip, right? Like you probably will need a little bit of removal along the way to be able to position yourself to snowball, right? To get out ahead, make your units survive a turn and be able to buff on and consistently. So we'll talk about the best cards a little later on tonight, but when we're looking at Snoke, right, in green, you have Protect the Pod, obviously a great fit here with Snoke with other big units. You're allowed to buff, and as you are allowed to buff, your Protect the Pod gets stronger. A common pairing for Snoke, probably the most common pairing and the most powerful pairing, would be green-blue. And there you have Crushing Blow, you have Whirlwind of Power, you have quite a bit, including Shatterpoint, again, and if you're not using the Force like Kyle mentioned, for Snoke, then you'll have it for other things. So those are some of the things you need. And then 3 for me, it's a bonus, Kyle. You have to tell me if you disagree, but it's upgrades. I think the Inquisitor Saber in Snoke is very strong. If you get a constructed Saber, watch out. A lot of flexibility there, I think.
I agree in this set in particular. In previous sets, we've had more removal options, upgrade hate, that are available to us as part of the set. In this set in particular, it feels extra good to hit removal. You could get away with a turn 2 Saber a lot more in this set. Really, the only answer or one of the clean answers is Crushing Blow. If your opponent's not playing blue, a lot of the times you can get away with suiting up turn 2 and just running away with things.
Yeah. So let's try to figure out the opposite now, right? We talked about what you need if you're getting Snoke. We want a snowball. We need these villainous units, so on and so forth. What do you need if you're playing against Snoke?
Well, it's kind of exactly what we're talking about there. Removal. You need an answer to that early play. again is Snoke. If I'm trying to snowball, I'm trying to hit that villainy unit right away and
Yep.
start buffing it. You need an answer, right? If I do hit that Exegol ship and I get a couple buffs up in the air and you don't have an answer for it, next thing you know, you're taking 5, 6, 8. The game's just over. So you need to be aware that that's what Snoke's trying to do, and you need to interact with them early. Try to trade off. Don't let these things get out of control.
Mm-hmm. Don't try to protect yourself from keeping a unit alive, right? Like, don't say to yourself, man, I really want to be patient and wait for the perfect opportunity to trade, because it's not going to come. At every single turn, they're going to be buffing above curve. They're playing below curve because they're buffing above it, right? And your units are likely going to be at the victim end of that. And especially in space, it can get out of hand really quickly. And on the ground, there's some other great units that we'll talk about later tonight. Knights of Ren, that becomes really large, right? There are some problem units. And I would say, even though you might say to yourself, man, Snoke's coming out on 6, I need to push some damage before then. Outside of, all this other stuff, is that you probably need to be more aggressive with cleaning up the board early than you think you do.
Yeah, I totally agree. Against Snoke, early game, you're really trying to kind of control things. Don't let him get out of control. And then from there, you're going to end up probably trying to go wide and attack him. Again, it depends on the type of deck you're playing, but I think that's a good strategy.
All right, so going back over to the tier list, you went first, unless you have anything else on Snoke you want to hit on.
No, I think I'm good.
Cool. So for me, I think the next one, and I think there's an argument for all 3 of these, right? So let us know in the comments what your top 3 is. But for me, the next one I think would be Talzin. And for me, I think it's Talzin. And to be honest, for me, it might be Talzin over Snoke, but I'm equally happy to get either, right? I think that Talzin, obviously you do need the Force, right? If you don't have the Force units, you're really in trouble here. But I think Talzin has an argument to be in the number 1 spot because her ability is just so efficient. Her flip turn could be so dangerous. She has a lot of health when she comes out on 5. Any sort of upgrade on her is really good. And I think she synergizes well with what I believe to be some of the best cards in the set, which we'll talk about later tonight, including Talzin's Assassin, Churret, Karis, so on and so forth.
Yeah, removal's at a premium in limited, right? And her ability has, it's built in tiny removal, right? It can finish the removal you're doing something.
Mm-hmm.
It can shrink a unit so that you can trade efficiently into it. On the flip turn, it's a -1/-1 flip, a second -1/-1, right? So to your point, Talzin's very good because of that specifically, right? Just the way to kind of help you control things, kill things, pick off little things, that sort of thing. So sometimes your opponent's forced to play like a 1 health unit, right? Like it might be all you got. Well, that's terrible into Talzin, right? And so just having the ability to kind of clean those things up, I agree, is very scary. You also mentioned getting an upgrade on Talzin. She's flips earlier than like a Snoke, right? So she's a decent statted 5 flip. She's another one of those ones that's terrifying if you get an upgrade on her, right? She's very hard to remove.
And if I'm being pro Talzin compared to Snoke here for a second, another pro argument I would make is that like she could interact a little bit more in space because of that, right? Like, and she could probably skew a little bit more aggressive than Snoke can in the right colors, but maybe I'm wrong there. So before we dive into what you need and all that stuff for Talzin, would you say that you have Snoke in that number 1 spot, or is it just like a preference similar to I have it?
I think it's I think you could argue either. It's going to depend on your pool, your card composition. I like Snoke just because I've been successful with Snoke in the events that we've been playing. But I would be elated with either one.
Sure. Okay, so let's dive in. What do you need? What's the first question you got to answer with Talzin, Kyle?
Yeah, Force. You have to have the whole thing that makes her go is Force, and I find her to be more dependent on her Force ability than other leaders. It's very efficient, it's very effective, but you really need it. So early Force units like the Talzin, the 2/2 that draws you a card, right? You're really going to be looking for some of these early Force units, hopefully ones that are a little bit sticky, like a Force Crafty is very good here, enabling her ability, being hard to remove. And so, I think what you're really looking for is early Force enablers. And then obviously you get a lot of the Night Sister stuff that goes with her is just an extra bonus, right? If you get a Karis, you get a Night Sister Warrior, you get the -3/-3, the Assassin, right? There's a lot of very complementary cards for her that just make this engine really tough to deal with.
And for me, that's why she has the edge over Snook. So let's dive into that group really quick, because just as you're talking about the units, because I think there's an event side that's pretty unique to her as well. But Karis, right? Kylo, Night Sister Warrior, Infused Brawler, Secretive Sage. You have really good turn one plays in this format. That's funny. The Towson Red, one of the drawbacks is that you don't have amazing turn one plays, but in this format, you see how strong they are compared to the rest of the set. I think anytime you're able to get a sticky unit, like I think Karis or Secretive Sage would be my two preference points, but I will say, and this would be like a little bonus nugget, is that I don't think there's a single leader in sealed in limited right now that needs to play a turn one force unit more than Towson.
Yeah, I agree. It always feels like if you don't have it turn one, and then if you're combating Towson, if I start removing your units, as soon as you don't have the force, my number one priority is going to making sure you don't get it again, right? Yep. Any chance I get, I'm trading India, I'm killing things, I'm keeping you off of it. And then she feels kind of weak. There's just a lot of things that are going to end up in her color profile, in her deck, that are going to be force dependent. And when you're just force starved, it gets rough.
Mm-hmm. So speaking of the things in her color pool, I want to hit on a couple of our top cards, as we'll talk about later tonight. We have a spreadsheet that as a team we put together, and we were kind of just saying to ourselves, like, what do we think the best cards are? And we sorted by top tier. And what you'll notice here is that 4 out of like the top 20 top tier cards are all in some form of vigilance, right? Which happen to just really fit with what Towson's doing here, right? We have Towson's Assassin, we have Churret, we have Anakin Skywalker, we have Shatterpoint, we have Eighth Brother, Craving Power, Tyranitech, Protect the Pod, right? And there are others that are heroic that are really good as well that we'll talk about. But I mean, it really does come together when you put it like that, right?
Yeah, and some of those cards on that list, it was, occurring to me as you were talking about it, are tier 1A premium cards with the force, and are kind of junk without the force, right?
Sure.
Like Towson's Assassin's a good one. With the force coming out, -3/-3, killing something, giving you the 4/4 body as a force unit herself, amazing. If I've kept you off the force, it's just a 4/4 for 4. Whereas I contrast that with like the Itinerant Warrior. The Itinerant Warrior, if I have the force, it's cool. I can heal for 3. That's nice. I don't need it. It's still a 4/4 body with a shield for 4, which is a huge difference.
Yeah.
Right. And so, yeah, it's definitely polarizing on a couple of those cards.
So we've established that we want the force, we want these units, etc. I think one other edge that Towson really has here as compared to Snoke, and for me would be like a tiebreaker over Snoke, is that there are quite a few cards in the set that do well with HP and damage reduction, right? So Whirlwind of Power is one, it's a -3/-3 if you have a force unit out. Works really well with Towson. On a flip turn, that could be -5/-5. In conjunction with Karis, that could be -5/-5, right? In conjunction with the Towson's Assassin, it could be -5. So there's a lot of really good synergies there, as well as, Protect the Pod with her coming out a turn before Snoke, having 7 HP, can just kill Snoke right off the bat, which I think is one of the stronger interactions in limited right now, is just killing a leader with Protect the Pod.
Yep, and that was one of the things I was going to, give her a leg up on too, is just being a 5-flip. Right. Your limited games a lot of the time don't go long, right? There's been a lot of times where I've drafted, say, Yoda, and you're like, this card is amazing. Look at this. Yoda's incredible. But you don't get to turn 8. No. You don't get to 8 resources, right? And so, having a leader that flips earlier on 5 compared to 6 sometimes can be a huge deal, right? To your point, holding Snoke hostage, right? If we're both in green, I'm holding Protect the Pod. I came out first, right? So, I totally agree with you. Just flipping a turn earlier with a powerful leader is definitely a leg up.
Yeah. So we spoke about it a little bit. Keeping Towson off the force is the thing you want to do as you're fighting her. What else is the deal here?
I mean, I think that's number one. I can't think of another general strategy. It's keep her off the force. Do what you can. Trade into the units, kill things, force units specifically, right? I mean, there's other really good cards out there like Nameless Terror that can help you here. But really, it's keeping her off the force, I think, is number one priority.
And as a teaser, we're going to go through the best cards as we end the episode tonight. But I think as a tip for just general Towson play, is that you really need to minimize the impact of not only her flip turn, But the way that I look at it, especially as a Towson player, is turns resource 4 through 6. I kind of look at it as like one unit, right? Where on my resource 4, I'm really setting up to have a very impactful Towson flip. And on resource 6, I'm putting my opponent in a place where they can't recover based on the advantage I've built on my flip turn in resource 5. So I think a key here is to be really mindful about the amount of health and the amount of damage you have on your units going into that window, that especially resource 5, but I believe it's resource 4 through 6 that you got to be really mindful about.
Yeah, talking that through too, like on 4. So I'm assuming what you mean is that turn 4, you want to position yourself, hopefully in a situation where you end up with the initiative and the force.
Yep.
You want to be able to start her flip turn with the force, hopefully use her ability, soften something up. You might need to regain the force, maybe not, but then you're able to flip her and get that, second -1/-1.
Absolutely.
After you've already led the turn with a softening up of something or a removing of something.
Yeah, and whether I want to use Towson's ability like on my first action, I want to set myself up to control the action flow of that turn, right? Where everything is by my schedule and not by my opponents. And I think that if you could come out of that, speaking from the opposite perspective, you come out of that window not being really killed, I think you're in a really good spot.
Yep. Well, and again, going back to the Snoke battle, like if I come out of that window, relatively unscathed or in a good spot, now I'm flipping my bigger leader, right? And we're going to see how it goes.
And I'm not going to be able to catch up,
right?
Unless I have very specific things. Okay, let's go over to the next leader that we'll talk about, and I'll pick it for you because it's pretty self-evident, and that's your boy, Mr. Kenobi, Obi-Wan Kenobi. So right now, we've said that Towson and Snoke have an argument for number 1. My question to you, Kyle, does Obi-Wan have that same argument?
So I think Obi-Wan belongs here in this grouping, but the reason being is he's the heroism leader that fits at the top of the tier, right?
Yep.
So if you draw your pool and you don't have a good villainy pool or you don't have good villainy options, Obi-Wan, but you have him, he's your man, right? So he's Snoke-like. He does have the advantage of coming out earlier. He does not snowball like Snoke, though, because he can only give a unit XP one time. He can't give it to himself like Snoke can, right? So he's going to be spreading the love, right? So you're not going to try to snowball a giant unit and get a victory that way. But what you are going to do with Obi-Wan, hopefully, is go wide and make all of your units more dangerous,
sure,
right? You also don't have to play below curve, but you do have to have the Force. Unlike Towson, though, if I have the Force with Obi-Wan, more than not, it feels like a bonus. Sometimes I might not even use it because I need the initiative. I don't want to lose it to use his ability. So I'm a little less force dependent than I am with Towson trying to really make use of this ability. So he's almost like a melding between the two, right, in some ways. But he definitely belongs on this tier. If you're in the heroism colors, I often find that Obi-Wan's the one I'm looking for to pair with, with what other aspect I've drawn into.
So I'm going to put you on the spot, and I'll do it as well. We're going to assume equal card pools, right? We're going to assume it fits for everything. If you have the choice between all 3 of these leaders, what's the ranking?
It's probably Towson, Snoke, Obi-Wan. I have a bias towards Snoke because I've just done well with him. But I think if you told me I got to pick all my things, and the reason I'm going to put Towson at 1 is because she's already blue, and I want to be playing blue because that's where the majority of the removal
I think that's really fair.
Right. And so if I'm going Snoke or Obi-Wan, I'm probably trying to pair them with blue to make it happen. But with Towson, I'm already in blue, and I feel wide open to go any other direction with my other aspects.
Yeah, personally, this is how I would have it ranked as well. And this, and maybe saying judging at the absolute strength isn't the best way to do this ranking. I don't know. Let us know what a better ranking way to do, and we'll do that later. But yeah, this is how I would have it. And I think 1+ here is, especially in a drafting environment, there is some statistical argument to saying that Obi-Wan could be better positioned based on less competition for his colors. That being said, that same competition is there with all neutral colors. It's just the difference between not having Snoke and Towson be villainous.
Yeah, in a draft scenario, right? I'm really looking at the players, 1, 2 to the right of me, 1, 2 to the left of me, seeing what leaders they have, because that's definitely going to inform my decision making on perhaps which color I'm going to go towards or which leader I want to try to build around. Right? If I have, let's say, these three leaders, so somehow I'm blessed and I have all three of them, right? But I look to the left and I see a Talzin, and I look to the right and I see a Snoke. I might start thinking Obi-Wan, right? Because they're probably going to play towards their stronger leaders, which is going to give me a higher percentage at getting heroism cards.
Mm-hmm.
But some of that you feel out as a draft is going along. Fortunately, in Philadelphia, we start with sealed. So if I'm fortunate enough to get to the draft aspect, that means I've made it to day 2, which is part of mission 1 accomplished. So I think we're focused primarily on sealed here, right?
Yeah. So we're spending the most time talking about these top 3 leaders because this is where you really want to be. So let's do it for Obi-Wan the same way we did for Talzin and Snoke. We spoke about what the number one thing is that Obi-Wan needs. And what is it? Is it force units or is it just good units overall?
Yeah, I found with Obi-Wan, it's a collection of just good units, right? Obviously, he's got some that are just tailor made for, right? You got the youngling Padawan. That feels so good on turn 1 in Obi-Wan. You give yourself the Force, and you have a 3/4 right away. You're going to be able to trade into just about anything they're going to play turn 1. So, he's a super bonus. I've been fortunate enough to draft an Obi-Wan deck where I had like 4 of him, and it just felt insane. But beyond that, I don't think, like with Talzin, I'm not as force dependent. Again, sometimes I choose not to use his ability anyway because I might want initiative or whatever. But I think with him, I find that a lot of the time I'm trying to go kind of wide. I'm trying to hit a wider strategy because I want to have a good spread of powerful units and probably a lower curve than other decks because I'm really trying to spread those buffs, go wide, and try to get you that way.
So I guess the number one thing for Obi-Wan's a little harder to distill.
Yeah, I think so. It's more going to be a clustering of good cards. I think it's really determining what your second aspect is going to be. Obviously, you're going to be in command green because Obi-Wan himself is command. Yeah. But for a secondary aspect, you're going to be looking really long and hard at what that should be. I find when I play Obi-Wan, a lot of the time it ends up being cunning. Just kind of, there's a lot of good heroism cunning cards like the youngling Padawan. So I tend to go in that direction, even though my gut always wants me to go blue and take removal.
See, that's where my gut takes me with Obi-Wan is always Obi-Wan blue. So I think it's interesting to have some different discussion there. I think part of the issue with yellow is that your removal is really relying on protect the pod. That's all you have. And you have whirlwind, the Whirlwind of the Force, I think is what it's called, right?
Yeah, the bounce.
Yeah, and that's like the best tempo you have, give or take. So it's tough there. But if I had to distill it down to one thing for Obi-Wan, it would be very, very strong turn 1 plays, right? It's you need a Gunji and or a youngling Padawan, and if you have those, the game feels a lot better. Another differentiating factor from the villainous leaders here is that I think that the heroic leaders have access to much better space units, especially the long beam cruiser and the 5/5 with raid 1 that are heroic only. So I think being able to mix those up and be able to present like this mixed go wide strategy where you have some buffed units and you're pushing along the way there is really the way to go. And let's not forget, Obi-Wan comes out on 5. He represents on that flip turn potentially 5 damage, 1 from the experience prior to flip, 3 from attack, plus 1 experience elsewhere. And if you can set that up, it becomes really, really, really nice. And certain units like the Outer Rim Mystic and Luke Skywalker go so well because they're just such big units and they're just hard to deal with, right? And I think where Snoke and Talzin have a lot more unique skills and unique perspectives that they could offer, I think that Obi-Wan is kind of just like one of those generically good decks.
Yeah, it's funny. I feel like I'm sitting in math class and you're the kid behind me reading off my notes. I was going to be insightful about the space talk and then you went right into it. But I find my most effective Obi-Wan games are exactly that. 2-drop, 3-drop, 2 drops, right? It's a really aggressive, wide strategy on ground until right around 5 resources when it typically is pivot to big space units. And I'm going to finish off the game there, right? So I'm going to battle you on the ground. I'm going to try to poke you up, from the ground. I've got my force units. I'm buffing. I'm getting a chip damage there. that sort of thing. But, again, my most effective ones are then right around, that 5 is when I started going space unit, 2 space units, another space, to your point, there's a lot of good heroic space units, and villainy typically does not, I've found, have a lot of good action there. And so that's where the pivot kind of leads to the win.
Yeah, so we really weren't able to distill down what you need for Obi-Wan as well as I hoped, honestly, compared to Snoke and Talzin. Let's hope that we can do a better job talking about how to interrupt it. And I guess I could take the first stab at it. And I would say that you're really trying to limit the amount of actions that they could take on a turn, bar none, right? So you don't want to let them sequence properly to be able to buff, swing, experience, be ready to do it again the next turn, and so on and so forth. I think that early sequencing is really important versus Obi-Wan, especially if you're talking about Snoke and Talzin as a comparison, where they're a lot more easy to interrupt.
Yeah, I found a lot of times against Obi-Wan, you're going to end up with the initiative. So if I'm playing against it, keep in mind, I'm going to end up with the initiative a lot. And then also, don't forget that his buffs can only go to an unbuffed unit, right? And so, when you're doing trades or when you're attacking, trade into that one unbuffed unit, right? So like if he's already got a buffed unit, perhaps keep in mind that you're going to leave that alone. He can't further, he can't snowball it. He can't further buff it, right? And so he or she. But so when you're doing your attacking, just be mindful of what exactly that ability does, because you can prevent it from being effective or it from being used by just ending up with the initiative and trading into that thing that your opponent might be looking to push.
Yeah. So we're back to the tier list, and we have 3 meta leaders. The unfortunate news here, everybody, is that everybody else is questionable, right? So let's just start in our favorite tier, and that's the trash. It's got to be Revan, right? It's got to be Anakin.
Yeah, there's a couple of leaders. There's a few leaders here that are just simply unplayable.
Yeah.
Right. You're going to open 6 packs, and you're not going to open 6 of these. They're rares.
You better
if you open these, you can just set them to the side because the answer is no.
And it's bad luck, right? So Qui-Gon, you're not going to get, because unless you get a showcase, which is very unlikely. So for the sake of conversation, let's not talk about him. Maul, same situation. Then you have
let's talk about why here. So Revan and Anakin, the reason they're unplayable is because they don't provide you that second aspect. You're already dealing with a limited card pool, which is going to weaken your options.
Yeah.
If now you're saying you can only play one aspect, it is very, very unlikely you can make a reasonable deck with one aspect unless you have some crazy pool. But that's why these two are just out.
Yeah, where Qui-Gon and Maul are out because you're very unlikely to get them, right? Yeah. Let's say for the sake of conversation, if you are to get lucky and get a showcase, I would probably consider Maul to be somewhere in the good to strong range and Qui-Gon to be basically unplayable in the okay range.
Totally agree. Yeah, I was going to say the same thing. Maul, he has that ping ability. He can kill things. Yeah. I mean, when we did get to play with these 2 leaders in the pre-release, Maul was playing. There was a lot of people playing Maul, and he was effective, right? He's a good flip. He can kill things. He's a good leader. Qui-Gon was not present.
Yeah, and the rest of the trash, we have Rey, Morgan, and then Barriss. You could debate Avar. I think Avar's for me is more in the okay area.
I was going to debate. I'd put Barriss next to Avar if I was going to have that discussion. Barriss is I don't want to play she's a decent body.
I don't want
to play either one.
Right. Kylo, I don't want to play. I'd be very upset if I didn't have Kylo. So
he flips way too late, and it's almost unheard of that you're going to get enough upgrades to actually support his ability.
So we have 6 leaders here outside of the 3 that we said are meta that are somewhere between strong and okay. I will make an argument first for a very unpopular leader, and we'll go quicker through these, but it's Ahsoka, right? And I think I would say that Ahsoka is not strong, but she's good. She's the top tier of good. And I think that's because there are ways to play her that are pretty annoying. She is in the right color scheme, right? You could do blue-green, and that's really what you want. She has blue. She could play this removal. She flips on 6, which is a little shitty. She swings for 5, which isn't bad. Her ability is that you could give Sentinel to a unit by using the Force, and then on the attack, you could give a Sentinel to a friendly unit, including yourself. I think the way that you make Ahsoka work is by trying to get, or drafting, or opening and getting lucky, painful cards to trade into. The Jedi Guardian is one example that gets a +2 buff when attacked into. Plo Koon, another really great example. If you could make him have Sentinel, it's really dangerous for someone to swing into him. Another example that I have found some success with Ahsoka is the Gungan Warrior, because it's shielded. And I think that shielded units, grit, and other things like that, making someone spend an action to do something uncomfortable, I think is the way that you make Ahsoka work.
Yep, I totally agree. You played Ahsoka in our playtesting session that we did in person, and while you didn't win, I had Obi-Wan to be fair. But the turns that you made very difficult for me were exactly that. Plo Koon, right? Giving Plo Koon Sentinel is a huge problem, right? So if you have big butt units to support throwing out in front of me that I just have to deal with, now it's only for that turn, right? So you need to sequence it hopefully early, that you give that Sentinel. If I've already swung to your base a couple of times,
yeah,
pardon me, and then you give Sentinel, I could just say, you know what, claim, I'm not dealing with this. Or, in my case, in our games, I think I dodged up to space. It was that Obi-Wan 5-6 resources, and I just started going heavy in space and ignoring your big Sentinels on the ground, right? I find with Ahsoka, she ends up being kind of delay. I think that was my critique there, was when you do some of these things, it's cool, it delays, but in my view, it delays you losing. It doesn't actively help you win.
And I think there are ways that you can win with her. I would be upset if I played her in the main round in Philadelphia next week, but I think it's doable. I think if you had to, you could, and you could come out with a winning record, and you're not just instantly screwed, which is kind of the secondary goal, right? If you don't have one of the elite leaders, it's try to make it work. So that's what this exercise mostly is for, right? Hopefully it's helpful to any of you all listening. Another note here with Ahsoka is that she kind of could pair well in multiple different colors. Yellow is nice, green is nice, and red is nice as well. I think green is nice because you get some really, really strong late units, whether it's Kellerin, Yoda, etc. if you get up to that area. With yellow, you have the combination of being able, if you get lucky, to play Jedi Sentinel and Chirrut, which is always very, very welcome. And also in yellow, oddly enough, there are a lot of cards that give Sentinel, right? Use the Force. I think it's it might be Disturbance in the Force, but there's a lot of different cards where you either get a combination of experience tokens or shields by using the Force. And I think that's a way that you could, again, make the attacks uncomfortable. Okay, so make an argument for someone who's better than Ahsoka, Kyle.
All right, so I'm going to pick one here that I think actually, depending on your card pool, could be all the way up to tier meta and all the way down to tier okay, and it totally depends on your card pool, and that's Kanan. I have had broken Kanan decks, right? So giving units shielded is a problem in limited play, right? It is. We already talked about there's not a lot of removal out there, and if I give something shielded, now you got to hit it twice potentially, or I can trade into you. Shielded units are at a premium. They are very good in this format.
That should be in the bark. It should be Shabark.
Yeah. One of the problems here, though, is getting creatures. So this is why I say he can swing all the way from meta all the way down to okay.
Yep.
And it's very, very card pool dependent. But I've had a couple Kanan red decks, where I have gotten just a litany of creatures, and things can get out of control fast, right? Things can get problematic fast. If you get a couple Loth Wolves, that is hard to get through with Kanan, right? Right away, I go Loth Wolf, and then I shield that thing up. You're going to have this wall that you're trying to deal with while I'm kind of hitting you on the back end, or potentially trading favorably with other units, that sort of thing. But if you can get some of these, like there's that red 4/1 for 2, right? That sort of thing. You think, oh, 4/1, that's no big deal. Well, if I put a shield on it turn 2, suddenly that's killing your turn 1 play without dying, and I'm expending the board, right? So, there's not a whole lot more to say aside from Kanan. You need to look at your creatures, because he is very creature dependent. But if you get a creature pool with this guy, you can have a very, very strong deck.
Yeah, and I think if we're assuming best cards possible, he's definitely better than Ahsoka. So again, the question real quick, what do you need? And asked and answered, it's creatures, right? Yeah. You also need
a lot of them.
Yeah. The ability to get the Force probably helps with other units just based on the colors that you're playing as well. Another thing to note here is that Kanan comes out shielded, which
well, Kanan's not Force dependent, right? So you don't necessarily need the Force.
Well, no, what I mean by that is that in blue heroic there are quite of good options to use the Force. So you'll probably be drawn to an area in which you'll want to use the Force in some ways. So it's finding that combination. If you could just go pure creature, I think that would be a really, really fortunate draw.
Yeah.
But
well, Kanan, you were about to say, comes out shielded. Not only does it come out shielded, if you've got him active, what is it? You have to have
a creature or a specter.
Yeah, he's an animal. Like
Yeah.
he's a huge flip too. He's not just shielded, but he's a big body. He is a problem if you've met that requirement.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, Kanan's trouble.
Another tip I have for Kanan is kind of like a little bit of a bait and switch conversation where you really spend that early game spending time building those creatures out on the ground, and then you pivot to space once you kind of have a little bit of a tough situation to handle, whether that is a shielded ravening Gundark or something ridiculous, right? Like some sort of big creature where you're able to get some shields down, make your opponent spend attention dealing with it, and then you drop one of those Republic long beam cruisers or the 5/5 with raids in space and really finish them off from there.
Yep. I like Kanan a lot. Every time I pull Kanan, I'm praying I get the creature support here because I have no problem playing him if you get the support.
Yeah.
He's super dependent on your pool.
So with that being said, obviously creatures are the name of the game here, and that's how you beat Kanan. You make it so.
Oh yeah, he plays a creature, you kill it, period. And you assume or hope that he couldn't possibly have that many, and that when he's out of creatures, his ability kind of does nothing.
Similarly to how we spoke about with Snoke, with trading aggressively early, you want to do that because it's going to snowball. The shield, he's going to get 2 shields on a Loath Wolf, and you're going to be pissed. So okay,
do not let that. Don't let them keep their creatures.
We'll go to the next that I will make an argument for being better than Ahsoka at the absolute highest point, and that's your friend and mine, the Smiling Jedi. That's not his subtitle. Kit Fisto here. I think if you get all Jedis, I think if you get anywhere between like 7 and 11 Jedis, you could make him work. If you get double-digit Jedis, you're cooking pretty good, and the Jedis tend to be pretty good. You know, like they're Jedis, right? So I think that the ability to do 2 damage per turn to something is really good, right? I think it's that clear.
Yeah, it's like Talzin, right? We're talking about removal being at a premium, and he has it printed on his leader side, right? Mm-hmm. So, we're playing a lot of understated or weak units in general in limited play, and he can start picking those off, or you could trade and he could finish something off. I mean, his leader ability, excellent. So to your point, yeah, if you can get the Jedi's to support, he's very good. Of course, the challenge with him is when he flips. He's one of those leaders that, if you've been in one of those games where you're just both going trade, right? Your board is not full of Jedi.
No.
And so you flip him and his body is useless. Mm-hmm. And so, we get to like turn 5 or 6 and maybe we've just been trading all game, killing stuff. You're flipping Kit and I'm flipping Snoke. It doesn't feel great.
And in the limited environment, the flip is very impactful. Not that it's not constructed, but there are other ways that you can come back from it in Premiere. In this, it's a little tougher. But I would say that if I got this out of our 3 remaining leaders, Cal, Grand Inquisitor, and Third Sister, Kit would be by far the leader if I had the right pool that I want to see.
Yeah, and a lot of times I found with Kit, he works well if I get that turn 1 like Jedi Starfighter, just some obnoxious Jedi space unit that's going to be hard for my opponent to remove. Now it just guarantees he's on. I just get to use his ability all the time. Even though I'm only hitting you with 1 with that little ship in space, you're not killing that ship, and it means my ability is good to go, right? It also gives him that little bit of buff when he flips. So those are the games that I find with Kit in limited anyway that are the best for me, is when I just get that 1 ship up there that just kind of doesn't go away and it keeps him going.
And let's remember that Kit is a great receptacle for an upgrade, right? He has Saboteur. There are also some great Sentinels in this color scheme. Jedi Sentinel's great. You could play Churret here. The green yellow, the green red, the red yellow, the red blue, all good options. I think it's really about where you get the most Jedis and how you can make it work. Another thing that I like is the Ascension cable in Kit yellow, where you could have multiple units then that have Saboteur, and kind of helps if you go wide. But it is a little bit of a harder build, and I think a tighter rope to walk to get right.
Yeah, Saboteur is a good point. People forget that Saboteur defeats shields, right? So don't forget, right? There are options or units out there like Force Crafty or these different units that are shielded out there. Keep in mind that the Saboteur defeats that shield, eats right through it, right? Because that can be pretty important.
Yeah, 100%, and that's the way it works. Okay, so make an argument for one of our 3 remaining playable leaders.
I guess out of these 3, if I had to get one of them, I'd probably want the Third Sister. And if I'm playing Third Sister, I'm playing aggro, right? Like I'm already in aggression. I have an early flip. Really with her, what you're trying to do with her ability is go hidden, is I'm just playing to the board and hitting the base.
Sure.
Probably. right? And so I'm using her ability to protect the things I play to the board so that I can get the initiative and hit the base with it, right? So, I think her pool, to answer the question of what are you looking for, you're looking for a very aggressive start. You're not really looking for some of these bombs, like as I mentioned before, you want bombs. I think with Third Sister, we're not getting to that part of the game. I'm not looking for bombs. I'm looking to hit you hard, fast, and end this game immediately. And so she can be good. And so I will put her on the good tier here, probably right where you have her, with a very aggressive pool. You can get it done, right? And there's been leaders in the past in Limited that are like this as well, where it's like, hey, this is the aggro leader. This is where I'm just trying to hit the base as hard and fast as I can. And if I can get I find with her a lot of the time, she's going to end up pairing with Cunning, because I can get kind of over attack statted units. I can get pumps. I can get additional aggression cards that are, hitting the base, being very aggressive. So her color pairing, I think, is a little more narrow because I'm probably trying to go, yellow red with her. But, she can get it done if you get the right aggressive pool.
Yeah, my one tip here is that I would not try to build blue-red Talzin with Third Sister as the leader, right? Like, it's going to set yourself up for a bad day. I think you might say to yourself, I could play the same game as Talzin in those colors, but the leader really does make a huge difference there. So like Kyle said, I would approach something a little bit more aggressively.
Yeah. You're not gonna put a bunch of removal and try to play the long game with her. It's kind of counterintuitive to what the leader's trying to do.
Yeah. So I'll make an argument for Cal. I have Cal for me above Third Sister. It's not a great argument. He has a force synergy. He comes out early. It's a really aggressive strategy. There are quite a few tempo cards and exhaust cards that you might be able to make use of. But overall, I think it's a pretty simple strategy. You need aggressive units, you need buffs, you need upgrades, and you need ways to push damage while hopefully keeping your units alive. He's probably, outside of Third Sister, he's probably the one I wouldn't want to play the most that we've talked about so far.
I mean, if I'm having to play aggro heroism, you're probably right. I would put him below Third Sister. His body is just so bad.
They're both right.
And then his ability is just so. Again, I used the term before when we talked about Ahsoka. His ability delays me losing. It doesn't help me win because I just don't know with his crap body and with the card pool available that I can be aggressive enough to trade off his ability functioning in a way that kind of does the aggro / tap you down thing properly.
Yeah.
I haven't had a lot of luck with him.
All right.
I find he gets traded into by a 3-drop and I'm sad.
We talk about protect the pod being bad for leaders. He's terrible for Third Sister and Cal.
Well, at least Third Sister's hidden, right? Like when she
but protect the pod doesn't stop that.
That's true. Well, she comes out before protect the pod though, so at least hopefully she's.
No, it's the same turn.
Is it 4? Yeah,
no,
you're right.
protect pod 4. She's 5. Yeah, okay. Yeah. So then we have the Grand Inquisitor. To me, he's just where Cal is too. I think that Yellow Villainous is not really a color scheme that I'm really pumped to play unless I have to with Snoke and Talzin.
Yeah, I mean, part of the argument I guess you would look at is like from set 1, Jyn Erso was okay in Limited, right? Because it enables this ability to, it enables this ability to trade favorably and kind of try to control things. The problem is he's tiny. His body's tiny and it requires the force. And a lot of the times I find I get in these weird situations where I don't have the force and I can't use it when I want to use it. And it's just, I've played whole games with him where I can't even use his ability effectively a single time. Right. So his ability in theory is good, but it doesn't happen enough.
Yeah.
And then he's kind of a weak body. And again, to your point, he's in a color kind of cunning villainy that I'm rarely wanting to play.
And if I had to be positive about one thing, it would be that he has a shield, right?
Yeah.
And he has a force unit, and at those things, it's pretty cool. So that's our tier list. Clearly, we're really hoping we get an Obi-Wan, Talzin, or Snoke, and we're flying across the country with that hope there. Okay.
Or a Kanan with 10 creatures.
Yeah, I'll take that too. All right, we got this spreadsheet that we've been talking about. Let's go through it real quick, and we'll end up the conversation there. So what we did is we were just hanging out in Discord, and I whipped out my collector sheet, and I was just like, hey, let's go through and try to list the best cards. So we labeled it really, really objectively by top tier, very playable, and trash, right? So the things that, and as you probably heard from our conversation, the thing that really stood out to me was how many blue-green cards there were, right? Whether it's villainy or heroic. We're talking about, and I'll zoom out just a little bit so we can get a wider view of how many cards we have here. But in our top tier, we said that there were like 18 cards, 17 cards, and just about 3/4 of them are some combination of blue-green, which is just absolutely crazy.
Yeah. But I don't think we don't need to read every card.
No.
And I think to your point is, are we going to put the link to this, or
if somebody wants, they could comment and we'll figure out a way to send it to you. We'll give you like a sign up link and you could sign up and get it sent to your email probably.
Yeah. So there's a few here to highlight, I guess, as you scroll up. Is this the top tier? So, okay. I want to call out a couple here that are just bananagrams. Chirrut is broken, right? This guy is the scariest thing in limited. Your opponent plays this and they have a way to keep the force going, by having force units already out or whatever. He is so hard to get through. He almost commands removal. And if you don't have removal, you're going to have to trade into this guy with multiple units. Chirrut is terrifying. Like almost if I open a single Chirrut, I'm almost like, I got to play.
I'm playing this.
I got to play blue. We're figuring this out,
So I'm putting you on the spot like I'm known to do. Is it the best card in limited?
I think it's for
we
me.
have the ranking spot empty, right? We haven't aggregated.
Yeah, that might be number one for me. I'd have a hard time coming up with a card that I would rather pull than this. We've got some other ones here like Anakin. Like that's a legendary. You can't really count on pulling that. But Chirrut's reasonable, right? You're gonna see this card on the table a good amount, and it is so good.
Mm-hmm. So I think the argument against Chirrut would be Shatterpoint.
Okay.
I think Shatterpoint has an argument to be the number one card. I think Chirrut's better than Towson's Assassin. Agreed? Disagreed? Yep. I think Protect the Pod's another one that's probably up there.
Yep.
And one that I've been really, really high on that I do want to talk about is just Constructed Lightsaber, right? Like it's so flexible. It could play in any build. Needs a force unit, but like any build has different buffs for different purposes. You put that on a Mynock in space and start swinging away. So that's I think one of my favorites in the top tier.
It's a legendary though, so I don't think you can give it number one because you can't have any.
I'm not saying number one. I just think it's really it's growing on me.
Yeah. To kind of counterplay on the Shatterpoint, it can't kill leaders, and it's always a 1-for-1. Mm-hmm. Chirrut, I find a lot of the time kills 2 or 3 things.
Yeah.
Right? They end up having to trade multiple units in this. Chirrut is not a 1-for-1. Chirrut, a lot of the time, he can be, but a lot of the times I find him end up being a 2 or 3-for-1, right? Mm-hmm. And that can potentially spike his power level above a single targeted removal.
So let's go down to the very playable category. In this category, we had cards like Karis, Nameless Terror, Pong Krell. Pong Krell is actually one that I want to talk about, Kyle. What are your thoughts on Pong Krell?
I think he's awesome if you get to that point in the game.
Yeah.
Right? Because he's another one of those cards who costs a lot, does nothing when you play it, but then can get very good. So he fits into the bomb category, right? He could be a bomb that can get you over the hump to finish a game. If we've been having a game where we're trading back and forth, we're both still low on HP, and both of us are digging for that one thing to kind of close this out, Pong can potentially be that card.
Talking about 2-for-1 and being efficient that way, Pong can 2-for-1 a lot, right? So,
but not till follow. You got to set it up, and you got to kind of go through this whole
details. But yeah. All right, what's one of the cards that you're high on in this very playable era?
Nameless Terror was one I think when we were talking, I was arguing to bring up a tier from very playable to one of the top tier cards. Nameless Terror I find to be very, very. I mean, it's you just play it and just tap something down, right? So he's already getting you.
Yeah.
He's getting you tempo.
Very good.
Right? He's what, a 3/3 for 3, especially on turn 2, right? If you're trying to keep them off the force, right? So if you're playing against like one of these decks that really needs the force, like your girl Towson. If I've got the initiative in turn 2, I Nameless Terror in turn 1 play, so you can't attack and get the force. Is super good, right? So Nameless Terror, I find can be very swingy, and even in late game, just tapping down at okay, you got your Pong Krell. Nope, tapping, right? Yep. So that as he's very good.
So to take you behind the scenes, we had like 4 people in Discord and we were arguing back and forth. that's how scientifically we were doing it. But always room for interpretation there. Another card that I think is just universally so good, and I think has an argument to be in tier 1 is Secretive Sage.
Yeah.
Right.
I think I argued for this one in tier 1 too, but I lost.
Yeah. And then
if you and I agreed though, we got voted up by the other 2 people maybe.
And then another one that it's kind of weird, but it's Axe Wolves. And if you get the right upgrades here, he could really win you some games. And it's really not that hard to get the right upgrades either, right? Like I know it's weird. He's not that great in real play, but it's possible, I'd say.
Yeah, you got a few that kind of fit into that category. Watto can get super annoying, man.
Yeah.
Like You don't want to give him card draw. You don't want to let him keep buffing. He's hard to deal with on 3 resources. He's really annoying, right? Like,
Yeah.
you know,
This whole
but
tier is just filled with awesome cards that you're like thrilled to get, right?
yeah, there's a few more that I'm sure people watching this would argue should be in tier 1. Whirlwind of Power, right? Sure, I
Crushing
understand.
Blow, sure.
Yeah, Crushing Blow. Well, Crushing Blow, I think belongs in the second tier. It's conditionally good. A lot of the time, you don't want to just be paying 3 to kill their 2 resource thing. Where it's very good though is if they like upgrade. To your point, you know, they go turn 1 Force Crafty, turn 2 Constructed Saber, and you're like, cool, Crushing Blow.
Yeah.
Now, hopefully, a good player is not going to walk into that, but it can also be it could be a very necessary card against, say, Snoke. We talked about before when Snoke is trying to do the snowball thing on their turn 1 play. Crushing Blow is a way to kind of come back from that and stop that, right?
Yeah, and Knight of Ren, I think there's another argument there that that's an elite card and could be top tier. We were pretty selective about it, but as always, you could go through what we're talking about, let us know where we're wrong, and we will argue or say you're right, good point, you know.
Well, one here I'm sure is like lighting up in people's eyes right now is Yoda. Like, talk about the bomb of bombs, right? Yeah, people are like, how could you possibly not have Yoda at the top of the list? It's one of the best cards in the whole set. Well, that's exactly what we talked about before.
Yep.
You don't always get to 8 resources, right? Like, this is that really powerful card that's sitting in your hand. You can't wait to slam on the board.
It's the same argument for Kelleran, right?
But you're already dead.
Yeah,
you're like,
and it's one turn earlier. So,
I had an Obi-Wan deck with 2 Kellerans in it, and I didn't play a Kelleran the entire tournament because I was dead by 7 resources every game.
So, and here's another thing to think about. So, this sheet is being sorted by card number, which is off screen right now. I could move it over a little bit if it matters. But for instance, Karis is 31. But we're also sorting it by color in this area and very
these are not in order. They're in tiers.
Yeah, but if you see it here in these inside of these tiers, my point is that the representation both in very playable and top tier sides towards blue green, right? And it really does make a really convincing point for why those top 3 leaders are so important. So there's a couple other ones
sealed, right? Because you're not fighting people for cards. This discussion morphs and changes in draft because we all agree we want blue green.
Sure.
But if 6 people at the table are drafting blue green and you're the only person there drafting, yellow red, you're going to have a very concentrated deck of good cards potentially, right?
Mm-hmm. So we went through this. Like I said, if you guys want to comment below, we'll find a way to you can sign up and you can get it sent to you. On our end, though, as we talk about this, we're flying across the country. Like, if we get these shit cards, we got to make it work. And that's kind of what the prep is here. So let's just end really quick with a couple ways that we've been going through. We set out to make this a really quick video, by the way. We're heading in on an hour, which is typical for us, which is great. So we've been doing a lot of sims where we do in person, we draft the cards, we seal the cards, we move them around. That's really number 1 looking at it. Number 2, I would really recommend spending some time specifically, I'll put the links in the description, is going to our buddy C Raptor's channel, and he has streamed the Dallas PQ, right? And that was a limited environment and great coverage, did the draft as well, had a draft live camera. I think it'd be very useful for you to see some of that gameplay in addition to some of your other prep. Kyle, what's your nugget?
Yeah, the other one I've been doing is, you go to your local tournaments, right? You play here and there, that sort of thing. Save that 1 or 2 packs you get, right? That's what I've been doing for the last 2 months. Every time I go to one of these little locals or whatever, I get 3 packs, or I go to, Store Showdown, I get 5 packs. I've been saving them, and then when I get home, I build a sealed with them. I don't open them until I get 6. And then I just sit down, I crack them, and I just go through the rhythm, right? I open the 6, I look at the leaders, I consider my options, I go through my sorting preparation, I figure it out, right? And then I go, I have the discussion with myself over what deck would I build here. And like the last time I did it, I even brought it to the 2 of you and said, these are the 2 decks I came up with. Yeah. Here's what I had left. Tell me what you would go with, right? Why, exactly. Right? Like, this is my thinking in this direction. This is my thinking in this direction. And then you guys kind of help me out. So, I'm not actually going to play the deck in that case, but just having gone through, seen the cards a few times, really understood what I'm trying to do has been helpful.
Well, yeah. Another note there is that one of our buddies, Alex, is coming. Kyle, he'll be your buddy. He's my buddy. He's never played the game before, so I kind of put this sheet together to help him, and I think through helping that, it's kind of made us distill our opinions a little bit deeper there. So that's one thing I would say is go through the exercise. You could make a copy of the sheet and say, no, they're wrong here. This is how I would have it, because it will kind of uncover some stuff that you weren't expecting. Some cards that, for instance, like Gungan Warrior, I was really high on that. and I probably was a little under on it throughout before I really started diving into it. My really big nugget here is that I really, really advise you to say a little bit, it's a line I forget what movie, but it's called Embrace the Suck, right? And say, you might want Talzin and Obi-Wan and Snoke, and I say, yeah, no, duh, me too. But I really recommend you go out there and play the leaders that you haven't played yet, right? Like, if you haven't played Grand Inquisitor ever, I really suggest the first time you play it isn't at Sectors in Philadelphia or another competitive limited event. Make a bullshit deck. Spend 20 minutes. That's all I'm asking. I think it's for your own good. You don't want the first time you're playing one of these terrible leaders to be in a high pressure environment. I think that's deep down. That's what I would say.
If it is, there's always side events to grind those parts.
Yeah, exactly. But seriously, I don't think it's over. If you draft like only the worst leaders, it's over. But you could get by with Ahsoka. You get by with the kits. You could get by with a couple others. But I advise you, don't make it be the first time, right? Have a little bit of, know what the ability is. Because I'll tell you what, I played Ahsoka I played it at the pre-releases a few times, and I played it a couple times in our practice. And I was like, damn, man, I wish I didn't play Ahsoka. But after like the third or fourth time, I was like, okay, I understand. Like, there's a style of play. Like, here's a great little antidote. Kyle and I played, and then we switched decks. And Obi-Wan won them all, right? But I think the Ahsoka games that I was playing Ahsoka were much closer than your Ahsoka games. And I think that had something to do with the reps. Probably card draw and other stuff too. But like, spend the time. I know it's annoying. I know you're putting it out in the universe, but spend some time doing it. Okay, anything else before we get out of here?
Yeah, just open good packs. Right?
Yeah,
like that's my plan.
Is there a way we could like bring in our own packs? I promise, like they'll be legit.
I promise that they're random.
They'll be super legit. Okay, so I hope this podcast here was super legit for you. We wanted to go 30 minutes and like freaking assholes went an hour and a half. It's past my bedtime. All right, thanks for hanging out with us. If you see us in Philly, please come say what's up. We're always down to hang out, and like I say, Kyle's only rude over the internet, so in person he'll be totally cool. And,
That's true.
And we'll be able to hang out, have a good time. I'm really looking forward to it. I'm excited to get a new friend into the game, right? And he's got one of his friends coming. We're gonna have a blast. We got a couple teammates going. That's it. Okay, this is a little bit of a special episode. We got some other stuff coming out this week. A lot of extra content for you. Wow. Yeah, we're spoiling you a little bit. Okay, let us know if you want that spreadsheet. Put it in the comments below. And until next time, for Kyle, I'm Jordan. Stay tuned, and we'll see you in Philly. Bye.
Yeah, later.